So if everyone come back, if you're off somewhere, just calling you back to your desk now to join us again. We are excited to hear from our ACA president as he talks about camp in these crazy times and what he has seen throughout his areas. So I would like to go ahead and invite Bill Wood, our NAD camp coordinator, to introduce our seminar presenter. Thanks so much for being here, Bill. Please go ahead and introduce Mr. Rosenberg for us.
Thank you, Teresa. You're doing a great job. Hey, we are really blessed today to have our president of ACA as our keynote speaker at our first AACP Connect virtual convention, Tom Rosenberg. Before he comes on, just a few little things about ACA for those that are not familiar with ACA. ACA is a community of camp professionals dedicated to enriching the lives of children, youth, and young adults through the camp experience. We can all relate to that. ACA has been around for more than 100 years, and its members back in the early 20s joined together to share their knowledge and experience to promote best practices for camp and other youth development programs. There are 3,100 camps affiliated with ACA throughout North America, 3,100. 2,400 accredited camps. And I'm proud to say that in our system, we have 31 affiliated camps and about 28 to 30 accredited camps. 10,000 individual members. So it's a huge organization that Tom oversees. So as president of ACA, Tom Rosenberg is a leading voice for young people today, advancing the public's understanding of the value of camps for everyone as an essential developmental and educational experience. Tom comes from a faith-based camp organization himself, been involved with nonprofits. We're happy for that. He understands what we're dealing with, those of us in faith-based camps. So we want to welcome again Tom Rosenberg. Tom lives in Atlanta with his wife Pam and their son Daniel. And we want to welcome Tom Rosenberg to our 25th anniversary of the Association of Adventist Camp Professionals. Come on, Tom. Waiting to hear from you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Bill, and thank you, Teresa. Hi, everybody. I'm so happy and pleased to be with you today and wish we were all in person together, but this feels kind of fun too. So I'd like to share to frame my talk around some slides. So I'm going to go ahead and share, if it's okay, if I can share my, the host can allow me to share my screen. Let me know when that works. I think it says that host disabled participant sharing or something like that. So I can have that. That'd be great. Okay, good deal. 1 second. And here we go. Okay. Well, so thanks again for having me. My goal is to share some things with you for about 40 minutes and then take about 20 minutes of questions. I'm assuming you'll have some questions for me. This has been, as Bill said, I'm a camp director myself, working 27 years leading, faith-based camp, and I understand just how challenging these days and these times are for everyone. So, and we've been working really hard here at ACA to create a path forward for this summer, for summer 2021, so that more camps are able to operate safely in COVID-19. We did, there's a lot of research went into last summer. We knew that for those camps that were able to operate, we knew it was important to learn everything we could about how they operated and how successful they were, as well as learning from camps that were not able to operate in person, but did operate virtually. So we've done a lot of, we've done one study called the Camp Count Study, both of camps that operated in person and camps that operated in other ways, alternatively, as well as a family perspective study and also a study around innovation in camp in COVID-19. So as we'll chat about here in a minute, a lot of that information is forthcoming very, very soon, and it's going to be very helpful to all of us as we plan for summer. So so I feel like the kinds of questions that I know in talking with lots of camp directors out in the field, everyone is wanting to know, can we open camp? How should we open camp? What capacity should we have when we open camp? Who can be included in camp, and what does our facility and programs look like, and how can we keep everyone safe, and how do we staff our camp in COVID-19, and what do we do if we have suspected cases? And it's overwhelming, I know, but I'm here to tell you that I'm very optimistic. I would say cautiously so, but very optimistic about summer 2021. It feels like we're sometimes taking 2 steps back, 1 step forward, but we're heading in the right direction in the big view, and I'm eager to share all I know right now today to help you understand my perspective and see what your questions are based on them. So let's start at the beginning. Can we open camp? Well, and I will just tell you that in the camp count study, which the parts of it are done and parts of it are being analyzed still, so some of these slides reflect some of that early preliminary information. But obviously last summer, gosh, we all were responding at the last minute, trying to determine if we could open camp, how to do it as safe as possible. And it was very difficult. The state authorities, public health authorities were underinformed. The CDC was underinformed. It was very challenging. And so here we are in 2021, we're having, rapidly changing information all the time. There's a lot of information that we now have gathered that the CDC and other authorities are very interested in to help inform candidly to help them understand how camps were so successful last summer in operating in COVID-19. There were definitely some notable outbreaks at some camps, but we definitely have had those studied, and there's clear evidence that if you follow the non-pharmaceutical interventions that are outlined in the field guide, and if you also employ testing strategies that I think will be much more available this summer, your opportunities for success are tremendous going into this summer. So, but there's a lot of education and a lot of work to do to get to that point. So here we go. So, so those 2020 camps that opened, they had to really become adaptive and flexible. And so one of the things you'll want to do as you prepare for summer, if you didn't have the opportunity to operate last summer, was to really understand how you think you need to adapt your program, really having clear communication with your camp parents, treating them as partners, being very open about what you know and what you're working to find out, and being very authentic from the very beginning, and sort of constantly communicating with your public health authority partners and your families and your staff members. With should we open camp, I think that if we, heading into 2021, this was 2020. And in 2020, the data shows, this is just from the respondents to the camps count study, shows that over half were prohibited from opening by their state or local health department. 60% felt like they just didn't want to open because they couldn't maintain their culture or their traditions while implementing the necessary COVID-19 prevention protocols. And, a number of camps serve campers and staff who are vulnerable to COVID-19 and have a higher risk factor. And so that many camps decided they weren't able to operate in person because of that limitation, of course. And then, not being able to have the right supplies or equipment or the right information or the right support, frankly, from public health authorities because they were underinformed. All of those were reasons. And I think some combination of those things happened to many camps. So as we head into this summer, there's a lot more information available. We have more time. We're working on helping the public health authority catch up. They're very focused on school still. Our goal was to help them learn from camp so that they could so that they could approach the school year with more information. But I could spend an hour talking about that topic alone, so we won't go there. But there's a lot of opportunity for them to learn from what we've gathered from last summer, and we're having amazing conversations with the CDC, who are very eager to get all of that information and then help communicate it to the state public health authorities. So should we have camp? Certainly we should, if we can do it as safe as possible. I know you all know this, why camp is so important, why developmental experiences like camp are important for faith formation and the work that we do, giving kids a choice in their life in programs, helping them develop an identity about who they are, where they come from, what they believe, what their competencies are. I believe that the case for camp, my friends, is greater today than it was before this pandemic ever even began. Kids are isolated. Kids have been traumatized by the pandemic. The mental health data is starting to come out after the around the first 6 months of the pandemic. The CDC just published a study looking at ER visits for mental health reasons by children and teens, and the data is concerning. So we recognize that camp plays an important role in helping kids learn, but we also know it plays an important role around their mental health, their physical health, their emotional health. And so we would like, I think that everybody probably on this call would like to be able to knows that it's critical to their education, developing a growth mindset, helping develop their values, learning to regulate their emotions, and really learning to be an everyday learner and develop their knowledge and skills for the future. So, of course, we need to open camp, but we need to do it. We need to go into this fully informed, fully prepared, as prepared as possible, to best serve our kids in as safe a possible way as ever. I'd like to tell the CDC when I talk with them that every camp director is always focused on the safety and health of their campers and staff as their first and foremost priority, that we want to be the best public health partners possible in this pandemic, and we always have been in every other epidemic or communicable disease challenge. And I know lots of us on the call have been through many. So, these are some of the slides that we use when we talk about camp with folks that are not camp directors to help them understand how camp is a catalyst for growth and how the research, frankly, points to camp experiences helping kids develop social and emotional learning competencies, but also citizenship, environmental skills, stewardship, prioritizing their education, like helping them learn to contribute to the workforce, environmental stewardship, faith, identity, helping them build community, right, within their faith, within their camp group, and so on. Some of you have probably seen this before. We're in the middle of a 5-year longitudinal study at the ACA about the impact of camp on children and youth, as well as a separate study on the impact of camp on the young adults and who serve them as counselors, for example, in camp. And so we're looking at measuring what are those sticky outcomes that stay with a boy or girl as they grow up and go to camp, and to what extent do they carry some of these outcomes from camp with them as they pursue school, college, career, and life. And you can see in this slide, the role of camp. The higher the role of camp is here on the x-axis, the higher there, then the greater the role of camp. And then the data measures how important that outcome was in their daily life as well. So you're seeing where strong camp outcomes here around perseverance, diversity, appreciation of diverse ideas and different perspectives, independence, learning to live in the moment, affinity for nature, willingness to try new things, self-confidence, self-identity. I think we all know how important camp is for helping young people develop a sense of who they are and the community that they're a part of, their history and their future. So it's a very exciting study, and in the next couple of years, we will be wrapping up this study, and we'll be really working on, this is on the National Board right now is talking about the work ahead to really pursue a brand campaign nationally with the public around the value of camp, and the many different ways to think about the value of camp and also the value of safe camp. And so this research is, and also working at camp, frankly, the value of working at camp and how camp has impacted the careers and lives of many camp staff members. I'm going to move kind of fast, but please feel free to stop me if somebody wants me to go deeper on something. So, again, camp is an engaging environment. It's interactive. It's supportive. When I, one of the studies that I've been looking at lately, every year the CDC puts out a very upsetting study around youth risk behavior trends. And it looks at lots of risky behaviors that teenagers undertake, some teenagers undertake, and they monitor it over 10 years. It's a 10-year trend analysis. And the one that has really been kind of concerning over the past few years has been around our teens and how they have been experiencing an considerable uptick around feelings of loneliness and helplessness, and the suicide trends around ideation of suicide, self-injurious behaviors, all kinds of suicide trends. They're off the charts. They're really a problem. And we're seeing that was before the pandemic, my friends. And so now in the pandemic, there's tremendous concern, as I know you all probably feel in your own work, with making how can we best reach our young people in this pandemic. So if there's an opportunity for us to offer camp, in-person camp or virtual camp or family camp, all kinds of camp, there are opportunities to provide a supportive environment. I feel like whenever I have a chance to talk to parents, as a dad myself, I'd like to put it on us a little bit. We really need to step up as parents and help provide supportive environments for kids where they can take positive risks, where they can feel physically and emotionally safe, where they can have a chance to make choices, make mistakes, and learn from those mistakes, and grow and have fun. And also just think about what they want to think about and just think about who they want to be and learn to be a part of our peer community, all the things that we do in our work. So I think in coming out of this pandemic, when that happens, the demand for in-person immersive experiences like camp, especially those like camp which are educational, well documented that camp is very educational in so many ways, will be in great demand. And frankly, at the ACA National Office above the fireplace in the library, one of our former slogans, Better Camping for All, is there. And I think our biggest challenge, folks, is to try to serve all in our work across the field, because too many kids do not have the opportunity to experience these camps in a consistent basis in their lives. That's part of our challenge. So we give them that sense of belonging. We connect them with passionate, nurturing, near peer adults, these counselors who help mentor them. We give them a measure of independence from their families, from their parents, where they have their own place and their own time to be them and to be a part of a community and contribute and be a good citizen of that community and develop a group identity there too, where it's fun, where it's interesting. And we're learning from this impact study about after a certain dosage of camp, that's the word the researchers use, it really sticks. Like the impacts of camp stick on these youngsters, and it's pretty exciting. So that we're starting to see how the developmental progression is happening. Okay, so that's enough on why camp, right? We all know that probably very well anyways. But let's talk about this, as we head into summer 2021, how big can our camps be? I think the answer to that is really an individual question for every single camp. I know that sounds easy to say, but every camp has different facilities and has different programs, different capacities in their bunks if they're overnight camps, and dining facilities and so on. And so one of the things that we have to think about when we think about how big we can be this summer is we need to be prepared. If we're doing overnight camp, we need to be prepared to have a conversation with our public health authorities about how we will isolate and quarantine up to 3 separate populations. So, for example, campers or staff who might be COVID diagnosed as COVID positive. That's one group. The second group would be a cohort of people who have been exposed, have had prolonged exposure to someone who has been identified as COVID positive. So that's more than 15 minutes within 6 feet or more with a person who's been identified as COVID positive. And then the third one is isolating folks who have symptoms but have not yet been tested positive as COVID positive. So we just need to make sure that, especially in overnight camp, that we have identified places in camp, whether they're tents or facilities that you convert into wards perhaps, or maybe you're using some cabins, extra cabins that you have to designate for that. It's just important to have those resources should you need them. You may not need them. And I think that most camps are really financially challenged right now, and they want to run as full as they possibly can. Kids need camp, and camps need to be engaged in the work that they're supposed to be doing in order to be sustainable for the future. So I think there's a balance there, and we can help you think that through as you start as you work on your planning for this summer. We're thinking of, you need to think about like the physical space around your camp, how you're going to cohort your campers and staff in the smallest possible cohort group. Camps are the first, really, last summer, camps were the very first youth model that basically employed cohorting in the pandemic, and we've been able to document with scientists, environmental health scientists, how cohorting works very effectively and helps to ensure that if there is a COVID positive situation or a symptomatic person, you have minimized the impact on the whole camp while you isolate that cohort, that small cohort that person is in. So cohorting is really important. And of course, cleaning, your capacity of cleaning and sanitizing, your facility. So everybody's going to have different factors. And I think we think a lot about having conversations as we get closer to camp, and as we get more prepared, we'll eventually want to have some engagement with our local health officials and be able to explain why we're doing what we're doing in our particular camps. And we're eager to help you prepare for that. Day camps are typically when they are COVID exposed persons, or persons with prolonged exposure with a COVID positive person, or persons who are symptomatic but not yet diagnosed. They're typically going to be isolated immediately at day camp and then being picked up by mom or dad or guardian, and then be treated by their primary care physician with their family. And so it's a little bit different. Now, some overnight camps have a local population. They're not taking campers necessarily from out of state or from far distances. And so they have the ability to potentially do long-term sheltering of people who or quarantining of people who need to be isolated. They could potentially send them home. So I'm going to try not to go too deep so we cover a lot of territory. I think the other part about should we operate and how big is our capacity relates to our finances. This comes from the Camp Count study, just looking at the financial impact on the mean gross revenue of camps in 2019 versus last summer, those camps that were able to operate. Obviously, camps that were able to operate, they had a very short season. They had they chose in most cases to not fill their entire camp because frankly there were so many unknowns. And so most camps that were able to operate did so in a they operated marginally in a marginal way financially. So everyone is looking to try to have a more sustainable summer if they can, to the extent that they can, in summer 2021. One of the things that I think about a lot, and I bet you do too, is who's in, who's out. I'm hearing, and the research that we did in the camp count study really is, these are quotes from some of the submissions from the study. Really, what we're seeing is that there's, camps are trying to survive, so their focus on scholarship is diminished compared to what they normally would do. I think, and this is concerning, of course. We want to make sure camps survive and thrive. We also want to try to help, especially the low-income families who have been most impacted by the pandemic. So it's just a point of information, really. A lot of funding sources have dried up. So we're going to all try and do the best that we can there. And then we asked people in the study, the camp count study, what are your intentions for 2021? Would you please tell us? And as you can see, the vast majority of camps are planning to open for in-person programming where they can. Obviously not, still can't serve vulnerable populations, right? But, I think camps in general want to open with as full a capacity as possible, really trying to understand just what they need to hold back for isolation and quarantining, particularly around overnight camps. And then some are thinking about changing up their program in different ways. So, and then some are not going to open still. We already know from many of our colleagues who serve vulnerable populations that they're not able to operate for in-person, so they're going to continue to operate their really successful virtual programs that they were able to operate last year, and probably expand them. So, then what will our facility look like? Well, the name of the game is certainly about adaptation, and hopefully adaptations that don't require a lot of money. There may be some adaptations that are needed that require investment. One of the wonderful things about being summer camp is that, being outdoors is really perfect for COVID-19. The more ventilation, the more fresh air, the better. But you're going to, camps have to have an adequate amount of under roof space in order to be allowed to be permitted to operate. So, and we're hoping to have more consensus about the rules on that from state to state this summer than we did last summer. There was all over the place. We had people telling us 30 different things. But lots of camps have moved their food service outside, well, at least the eating of the meals outside, in addition to physically distancing cohorts inside the dining halls of the camps. The key with overnight camp, absolutely, it's a scientific fact now, is bubbling, creating a tight bubble around your overnight camp for the period of time that you can for your sessions. Creating that staff bubble first, and then when the campers arrive, you restart your bubble with that first session of campers. And I know that many of you may have overlapping sessions where you have, let's say, two 1 week sessions within a 2 week session. So there's some complicated logistics around that, but there were camps last summer that were able to do it. It just requires some sophisticated cohorting organization, I think, and some real thought. Not many people are doing it, but it's been done, and it's been done successfully. But basically learning to be adaptive. We've really got to help our families, our parents understand that that this summer, we're just not going to allow them on camp, right? We're going to have a tight bubble. We're not allowing staff to leave on their time off, although there may be some variations on that I'll talk about in a minute. And so there's, so parents have got parents and our food service providers that we've got to really figure out how to put a bubble around our camp and how to minimize in and out of anyone, frankly, to keep that bubble as tight as possible, because the science is showing that the bubbling works really well. Okay, so let's talk about what our programs look like. So this is some data from the camp count study, from last summer. And, not everybody had access to testing. and but most camps were doing temperature checks in their screening. They were screening for, we're talking about pre-camp screening now. So before a camper or staff member even came to camp, finding out from them about their recent travel, whether they've been sheltering in place for a period of time or not, screening for exposures to COVID-19, symptom screening, and the day camping. Of course, this was happening every day, every single day. This summer, though, I'm pleased to say that we know that there is going to be greater access to testing and more affordable testing as well. And the real story around testing strategy is not finished, because the innovation is continuing to happen. But rest assured, we'll be coming to you with a lot of information in the months to come. There's a whole testing strategy chapter now in the field guide that you should read if you haven't had a chance, because it really explains some of the basics of testing for screening and testing for diagnostics. But this is a great chart that comes from the camp count study, a preliminary information that came out. And so we were asking of the so the whole how we were successful this summer was really had a lot to do with these non-pharmaceutical interventions, right? So that's masking, that's physical distancing, that's cleaning and sanitizing, that's small cohorts, it's putting the bubble around your camp, it's the daily screening, it's the hand washing. And so we tried to get some understanding of which anecdotally, which of these were easiest for kids, most difficult for kids, and so on. The scientists right now, the epidemiologists, are studying the data from the study that goes to the effectiveness of, that speaks to the scientifically to the effectiveness of the different MPIs and which ones are more effective than the others. So there'll be some interesting learning coming out in that study in the next probably 30 to 45 days. And so some of you have seen this before. This was a graphic that we created around the culture of compliance. So many camp directors spoke about how it was important to do all of it, to do every single MPI to the best of your ability, and to create this we're in it together culture of compliance with parents, camp parents, the campers themselves, and the staff. Everybody had to be in it together. And when they did, they were successful. So when we look at the data that came in, this sort of the first cut of the data that came in, there were very minimal cases, even fewer outbreaks that happened last summer. There'll be a lot of really clear information. There'll be some really clear data analysis around that coming out in the actual final study that's probably coming at the beginning of January. But we did have a lot of media around the 7 or 8 big outbreaks that happened, and we have a lot of information about what wasn't being done well in terms of the NPIs or non-pharmaceutical interventions for those camps that had outbreaks. As you know, camp happened very regionally. It was a patchwork of whether camp happened or not, didn't happen across our country. So our number one priority is to try to work with the public health authorities across the country in conjunction with the CDC to use research, credible research, to inform public health policy to make sure that more camp can happen, but can happen as safely as possible. So this kind of, kind of shows that this is from a study from the field guide itself that just talks about testing and how testing strategies that were used. So if you haven't had a chance to read that chapter, I recommend it. So staffing is a big issue. So we still are struggling with the Camp Cultural Exchange Visitor Program, which is under has been suspended under a proclamation from the president. But as some of you know, there has been court intervention there, and there's an injunction. So a lot of that work is going forward for the sponsors, the cultural exchange sponsors that are, just checking my time here. Thank you for the chat. Thank you, Roger. So we really, so I would say that, on 12/31 of this year, that proclamation that is suspending the J1 hopefully will expire. There is a chance that President Trump will extend it while still in office, but we don't have any indication that he will. So we're hoping that that won't happen, and we will still be able to have some level of camp cultural exchange happening, but there are issues related to vaccinations and health issues related to international staff that we need to work through, and also just some State Department things around the consular operations to get this program turned back on most effectively. So we still have challenges with staffing our camps. I think that many of our college students, though, are looking for meaningful work this summer. They have had a disruptive and stunted school year and are looking to camp alumni are looking to come back to their home, their camp home, and be a part of a meaningful, heroic, frontline, essential worker experience of putting on camp. I think we will be able to communicate with our prospective staff members soon with some very good, credible research around how camp it can be as safe as possible this summer for them. I will tell you that one of our biggest government relations priorities right now at ACA, in conjunction with national youth serving organizations across the country, is to we're working with the CDC to have out of school time staff, like camp staff, be designated at the same priority as school teachers, because during the summer months we're doing the education, so we need to make sure that our summer teachers have the same vaccination opportunities that our teachers have during the school year. All of this is still up in the air, but we've started to make our case. And as you can see, this is like from our study, the camp count study. A lot of camps had to lay off staff or furlough staff. You all are very familiar with all of this. During the summer, camps had to hire more staff, more counseling staff, more healthcare staff. I have heard many stories, success stories, where camps had very little illness in their camps and where their expanded healthcare staff didn't have as much to do as they needed. But I think it's important to be prepared, because we are seeing the trends where young people, children and teens, are having increased rate of spread. So camps should expect to experience more COVID symptoms at the gate, that we're going to be trying to screen for in day camp and overnight camp, more so than last summer. That we've been told from the American Academy of Pediatrics and a few other sources. So, but I think, and let's talk about time off for a second. If we were able to get the vaccination priority for camp staff, and if staff were willing to be vaccinated, and if there was enough vaccine for them to have, that the vaccine, it might mean different things for time off. I'm trying to get a clear answer on this from our public health friends. I think that a lot of it depends on the quality of the vaccine and things like that. I think that the other thing is the other selling point for working at camp this summer is our college students need a break. They've had a tough year. They themselves are having mental and emotional health challenges around this pandemic. We do need to be prepared this summer as we staff our camps to use mental health first aid and and have other resources available to help our campers and our staff as they, I would like to believe, as they experience therapeutic nature and our wonderful program that we offer at our camps to help them restore some of the humanity that they may have lost in this pandemic. I know from talking to camps that operated that camp has been profoundly impactful on kids after being sheltered for so long. So let's quickly talk about what's ahead. This is really important. So this camp count study results. So the things that I mentioned today were just some low-hanging fruit. They're very preliminary. Right now, there's an epidemiological team crunching all the analysis on that study, on what was effective, what was not effective, really trying to help identify the best path forward for what made what are the best practices around camp that made camp safer last summer, and what will be the best practices that the public health authority will want us to adopt as we head into this summer. And then, and that's, so I would say around January 5th, January 10th, we expect that the camp count study will be published by the CDC MMWR Public Health Journal. That's the voice of the CDC. And we expect to have a lot of media attention around that. Frankly, the CDC is going to be using that data to think about spring semester for school, and they're also going to be using it to think about camp. And we're very focused on camp, of course. And so the second study, there's another study that we did where we have been doing some consumer research with camp parents, camp families, but also non-camp parents and non-camp families using Qualtrics research services to really get an understanding of what people experienced last summer as families, why they chose camp and why they chose other things. We want to try to understand whether we think that there's a greater demand for camp if it can be documented that camp can be as safe as possible. And we'd like to get under that and understand the perspective of the public around it. That study is underway and will be published in late January. So look for all kinds of stuff on that from ACA. There's also, I didn't put it on here, there's a third study, an innovation study that really highlights how camps pivoted from when they couldn't operate, how they pivoted and they innovated to create virtual programs or family camp programs or other kinds of programs, and also how camps adapted their camps to be able to operate in person during the summer. So that's innovation study will also be coming out. In the camp count study, there's a whole section that's around the camp operations piece, around what did it cost to operate camp? What additional expenses were there? How many more people they hired and so forth. All the nitty-gritty details of operations, that will be coming out. That will not be in the piece that comes from the CDC. It'll be coming from ACA directly. At some point, and then there's another study coming out in conjunction with the camp count study from the Association of Camp Nursing. The Association of Camp Nursing did a really wonderful study, a lot of interviewing of healthcare managers and camp directors around how they ran their healthcare operations and managed the communicable disease challenges around the pandemic and around camp last summer. And so there'll be some very interesting findings coming from that study, again, around the beginning of January, in conjunction with camp counts. We're trying to speak with one voice as to the best of our collective ability. And as we as we get prepared, as we start preparing for camp, so I just want you to know that ACA and our consultants at EH&E are working with the National Association of City and County Health Officers and the CDC to reach into every county in our country to the best of our ability to help provide the information that comes out of all this research that's appropriate to share with them what we know. Because I think what we found was that sometimes the communication from the public health department at the state level to the county level didn't always happen. And that was another reason why camps didn't really operate. They just didn't feel like they were supported. So we're going to want to work with you to encourage you to, in your own counties, to work with your state and work with your county health officials as they become more informed about what we know and what the CDC knows and what others know to help form the best practices for this summer. We're going to help you. We're going to hopefully get some media attention around staff recruitment and training. We think this is a great summer for college youngsters to work at camp. And we're going to be promoting camp, the idea of the camp experience with parents, sharing with them authentically the data that is coming forward from the MMWR article and the other research studies. We all need to start a narrative with parents to explain what we know, but also explain what we don't know in this pandemic. So I think I've said most of this already. And we just, we need to recognize there's a lot that many of us, since we didn't operate last summer, that we don't know and we're looking to find out. I think we know. I think one of the things we know that we're hearing from every public health expert we talk to right now is telling us, do not expect that healthy children will have access to the vaccine in time for camp next summer. The hope is that staff will have access to it, and that will be very helpful, because a lot, you'll see in the data when the study comes out, a lot of the impact of COVID on camp last summer was related to staff more than campers. Is it all worth it? Absolutely. I don't have to tell you that. This is a great quote from Karen Pittman, one of our nation's foremost youth development leaders. How just articulating how kids need our adult support. They need these supportive environments now more than ever, especially in the work that we're doing. And I want to quickly just do a little plug for ACA. If we're not haven't had a chance to serve you yet, we want to. We have over 4,000 camp professionals who are not members, who are not part of a camp that's a member camp or accredited camp, have reached out to us for help during this pandemic, and we're really doing everything we can to continue to support everyone who would like support in every possible way during this pandemic. And we'd love to encourage your camps to become accredited if they are not yet accredited. We have a brand new professional development center that is rolling out right now with some great online learning that's available at very discounted prices right now. There's a lot of great research about camp that helps you as a camp professional, a faith leader, articulate the value of camp to your parents, to your colleagues, to everyone. We are advocating as one field. There are over 15,000 camps in America today, and we are advocating as one. I work with the AACA, for example, quite a lot, especially on government advocacy. We've had joint phone calls with White House and things like that. So we're working together. So let us help you in whatever way we possibly can. And let me know how I can help. I also want to make sure that there's a misconception that accreditation might challenge you. I'm a faith-based camp director in a former life myself, and ACA accreditation is not trying to force you to accept practices that do not conform with your faith. I think the point of it is we recognize today that we believe that there's a camp out there for every child, but that not every camp is appropriate for every child. So we're trying to lift up the whole field for every child and young person. So if you have any questions about that, I'd be glad to chat with you about that. And that's really, we're at the point of the presentation now where I just really want to open it up, and I'm here for you.
Thank you so much. This is Jeff,
Hey,
Tom,
Jeff.
and really appreciate the presentation and all you do to serve ACA. Just so everybody knows, we've got just a few minutes here. If you have some questions that you'd like to ask Tom about, you are more than welcome to chat those in. Tom, can you also maybe, there we go. Just want to make sure we can
Yeah, sure.
connect with everybody. That's excellent. So go ahead. I had a question here. I threw it in the chat. How does the communication from ACA's information get to our county health departments?
Yes.
I know it didn't make it to mine very quickly.
Right. Right. Good, Jeff. Thank you. I think so. There's this organization that the public health people call NACHO, the National Association of City County Health Officers, and there's another one called SACHO that are state health officers focused. We're going to EH&E is so we're waiting for this research to come out. It's rigorous research that has a lot of value, and the CDC, the branch of the CDC that concerns itself with schools and out of school time, has been meeting with us regularly. They are so eager to have it. They wish they had it, in the summertime, but that's a whole nother conversation. So I think, we're working with EH&E to create webinars, really not from us, but more from them and from NACHO, hosted by NACHO. We're going to participate just to be friendly, but we're going to be doing those webinars. We also think that we're going to encourage camp directors like you, Jeff, to reach out to your account when this kind of stuff comes out. You have a relationship with your health department that you've nurtured for years. By all means, share the things that you're getting from us with them. We hope that some of that will result in the tail wagging the dog, the county health officer talking to the state saying, I'm hearing this. They have this document from the CDC. What do you have to say? Some states, are much more proactive about this work than others. So I think that's really important. I think the other piece is we want to create some earned media around the information that comes out in this research to authentically inform the public, families, parents who are like wondering right now at Thanksgiving and at Christmas time, gosh, I wish I had something for my kids to do this summer because this has been a stunted and disrupted school year. What do I do? So we're going to try to help with that too. But the most important thing, Jeff, is let's stay in touch. Bill and I talk, a lot, but we're here for all of you, our field staff, me, all of us. So if you're not hearing anything, by all means, reach out because you should be.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So somebody just made a comment here. Maybe you could expand on that a little bit. The Safe Camp Advocacy Zoom meetings.
Yes, thank you, Carmen. So we have been, so basically we recognize the number one challenge we're lucky we have the data coming that will be helpful to the public health folks, but every state has been all over the place. No two states had the same strategy. So we knew we were going to have to advocate state by state, and they don't want to listen to Tom Rosenberg. They want to listen to you, the voters, and their constituents. So we're working with every state possible. Many states have a state camp association. Those that don't, they're working to form a coalition of the willing in their state around advocating for camp this summer, like we've been talking about. And so every 2 weeks, there is a call. And if you're interested in getting information on that, I'm going to share
the link was just put in here in the chat.
Fabulous. Yep, good. So join those calls. And the most important thing we have to do is on each state, we want to have one voice, not 50 voices or 100 voices. But all of us know representatives and senators and people of influence. So we have to work together.
Yeah, that's fantastic. The field guide, I used it this summer, and it was a lot, and of course, not everything pertained, like it says at the beginning, to our individual camp, and so we reduced it some.
Right.
Are you guys continuing to keep that dated
Yes.
and so forth? And the second question would be, we have camps on here that aren't ACA right now. Is that still available for everybody, and how does that work?
Yes. So the first question, so it's been recently updated around October 15th. So there's lots of chapters have been revised. There's a very good chapter on NPI, what's called technologies and controls. That's really talking through the non-pharmaceutical interventions that really work, and starts to give you some of the knowledge that they're garnering around which ones are more effective than others. And the other really new chapter is about testing. But everything is changing literally all the time. Right now, every week we're getting new information. So as we can, we're updating the field guide. There is a full revision coming out right around January 15th. That's scheduled by contract with EH&E, and they're working on that now. But know that, like, for example, around testing strategies, that's going to continue to update constantly. And the other thing, Jeff, I just want to acknowledge is that, the people who write the field guide, they're scientists. They're not camp directors. Right. They don't speak the same language as us. So our professional development department is working on developing more tools that are in our language, that are simplified, so that because we need to basically communicate to everyone. My colleague who leads the after school world, they have 30,000 after school directors in the country, and they all are not going to focus on this whole big book of 117 pages. So we're trying to boil it down, but we also kind of want to make sure we're giving you the guide, because it's been shared. And getting to your second question, it's been shared widely. It's available free of charge. Our entire COVID-19 site all those resources are available, whether you're a member or not. There's some things that we do offer that are priced, have a cost to them. We do have to pay people's salaries and things like that. But in terms of COVID-19 resources, we've obtained grants so that we can continue to provide, contracting EH&E for a whole nother year, all the way through September, for example, was funded by a generous grant from the Lilly Endowment. And so we're keeping on doing that, Jeff. And everyone is welcome. And we've shared it with other countries. It's translated for the Japanese Camp Association, and so on and so on. So we have to help each other.
That's
and there's also stuff coming in from other countries. There's a great study of how 22 camps were successful in Barcelona that was informative for the American public health world this summer. Looking at Phil's question, limited liability of COVID at camps. This is a state issue, as I'm sure you know, Phil. There are 7 or 8 states right now that have passed legislation that are limiting liability of COVID at camps. If it's really about not camps specifically, but about businesses. If you operate a nonprofit or for-profit business, and if you follow the whatever the common practices are within your field of your business, so I would think the field guide most likely for camp. Then like in the state of Georgia where I'm located, we do have that law now here in Georgia where there's a limitation of liability for COVID. I think a lot of states unfortunately don't have that yet. So almost everybody I know that is operating a camp now has a COVID waiver that their attorney and insurance company has developed. So you should definitely be using that with your staff and with your campers to the extent that is possible. There's a lot of open questions around how COVID relates to workers' comp. I think that probably the most likely scenario is it is workers' comp, but in terms of I think that be careful what you post online. Camps that didn't follow the NPIs last summer and posted pictures where they weren't, for example, like following the NPIs. That's dangerous because now this is being recorded, but you don't want to put yourself in a position where a personal injury attorney is going to try to, pursue you for a claim, for some reason because you didn't follow the NPIs. So I think it's important to follow the NPIs. I think that it's pretty clear you can do it. You can do it, and the kids are going to have fun. You can still create a tremendous culture around your camp that looks like the camp that you know and love. And the kids are resilient. I was talking to a camp director in Texas where it was 106 degrees. Anybody from Texas online maybe? This summer it was a warm summer, and in their screened in cabins, Texas still required the boys and girls to wear their masks in their bunk this summer. I hope that doesn't happen again. I hope that they allow them to take their masks, have unmasked time in their bunk, in their cohort, in their family, basically. So I think it's a tough thing to advocate for, Phil, but I think it's going to be a state-by-state issue where these state advocacy groups can work together on that. And frankly, it splits politically right now, but maybe over time it will be less political.
So Tom, there's one more question here that we have time for. And that's from David. Are there any resources for year-round camps as groups and programming, and how do we operate with COVID?
Yes, we've been asking EH&E to produce a supplement to the guide that speaks to off-season or year-round programming. I will say that, in sort of getting at, if specifically, David, things like what should we be requiring of our tenant camps, and because I think everything that we would recommend for your camp, we would recommend that you require of your tenant camps, because you don't want your tenant camps to or your groups to put you in a situation where your own brand is in trouble because of how people behaved or how things were done, in a tenant situation. I also just want to say that in general, the experts are saying and a lot will come out about this when the data comes out in January with the analysis. There's a lot that school groups could have learned from camp this past summer in terms of applying the MPIs and the strategies around testing and the bubbling when it's an overnight camp situation. There's a lot that could be learned. And so I think, I would focus on the field guide right now for a lot of the principles, because the principles are very much the same. Cohorting with those groups should be doing cohorting. They should be masking. They should be physical distancing. You should be maintaining, a clean environment with sanitizing everything. You should be thinking about adapting your program, so that you can accomplish all those things. And, I think kids really enjoyed, from what I've heard. I've read a lot of feedback from parents that camps have shared with me, like verbatims from surveys. And the parents are just overwhelmingly excited about the change that they were seeing in their youngsters after just 1 week of day camp or overnight camp. And I think that honestly, one of my goals for this summer is to find a way to measure the impact of camp on mental and emotional health for our children and staff from the beginning of the summer to the end of the summer, from the beginning of their experience to the end of the experience. I'm pretty confident that camp is going to be that camp will be restorative and nurturing and help our kids restore some of their humanity through these experiences.
Well, thank you so much, Tom. We really, really appreciate you being here and being on our conference. Thank you for all your work and your leadership with ACA. Really appreciate it.
You're so welcome, Jeff. And we're just a phone call away, or we can have a follow up, or I just want to make sure you're being included, and I'm going to post my email in the chat here so everyone can email me at their leisure.
Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, absolutely. And you're welcome to stay if you would like the rest of the day. So
I wish I could, but I know you guys have a lot of work to do, and I think it feels overwhelming at times. One of the things, just really quickly, Jeff, that we were hoping, I want to suggest, well, one of the things we're trying to get is camps that did operate like yours, Jeff, if you could just share your playbook with people. Like I think I've seen you doing that in the chat. We're thinking about maybe putting up a resource area on the website for camps to share their playbooks, just so that those who have been down the road can help everyone who's overwhelmed with all the possibilities right now. But yeah. I look forward to hopefully a great summer or better summer in 2021 and a great summer in 2022. We can do it.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Lisa?
Take care.
All right. Thank you again, Tom. Just to echo what Jeff said, thank you for all of your work with ACA and being proactive and a camp advocate to give us these resources to stand on with our health department and our operations. And thank you, Bill Wood, for coordinating this seminar. We look forward to hearing more from ACA and have them with us in our future seminars. I know we've got some things coming up, and we'll share some fun tidbits later on this evening in the business meeting. Next up, we have one more panel discussion, the big dilemma of how are we going to recruit young people to work at camp this summer? I feel like pulling my own hair out. So we're going to have that discussion just after this break as we try to get young adults engaged in camp ministry for 2021. How do you even get them to talk to us about 2021? So we'll see you right here at 5:30 Eastern time for this panel. You guys enjoy the break. We'll see you soon.